All right, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. We've got another fun conversation coming up. There is no one that understands sports, of course, better than ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, and its parent company, Disney. But there's one area where they have been investing more than probably any other company, and that has been in women's sports. Rita Ferro, who is the president of Disney Advertising, has made this a mission for the company, and that impact definitely shows. So with no further ado, I'd love to introduce Rita to the stage, and we are also joined by two-time Olympian and rugby star, Ilona Maher. Come on up. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Ilona, this is very exciting to have you here because you are a very unique type of women's sports star because you're not just an athlete, but you're also an advocate, you're also a role model, you're also a pretty good dancer, as we all now know from Dancing with the Stars. Question for you. We are starting to see a lot of momentum around women's sports that are not just your typical, basketball, soccer.
Yeah.
Rugby being a huge one coming up with the World Cup. We're seeing a lot more momentum around things like softball, around things like volleyball. When do you think we get to the point where rugby becomes as much part of the cultural zeitgeist as some of those big sports?
It's going to take some time. It's definitely hard to break into the American market when we have so many other sports, but I think rugby can do it. I think what we've seen with sports is like having those star powers, like with basketball, having the Caitlin Clarks, the Angel Reeses. I think that's what rugby needs, and right now I'm doing it. I'm shouldering it, but I really want more stars to come forward and people to see, because I think that's what's so special about women's athletes is the personality they bring, the people that they are, and that's what fans are connecting to. So I want to see more, and I think that'll really guide us ahead to be a more mainstream sport.
When you think, Rita, about the stars, Disney is so committed to telling the stories of the stars. I know you just you're launching a women's sports show on Disney Plus. And thinking about women's sports athletes in particular and elevating them as stars, how much does that matter to things like ratings and viewership, having people that carry those games? Or do you think it's not about those individuals, it's just about the momentum of the sport?
No, I think it's both. So I think, you saw it last year, and it happened again this year in the women's Final Four. We had those three incredible personalities anchored in Elle Duncan and those girls who really did an incredible job of telling the story of every one of those athletes and students who were in the game. And that was incredible in terms of building momentum and fandom around them. People wanted to show up, wanted to know about them. And then you saw what that audience delivered. I mean, it was an incredible rating story. I also think what's so unique about women's sports is that cross sports, they're tremendous fans of each other. They build each other up, they show up, they watch, they engage, and I think that's incredibly powerful as well. Because I think, the beauty of women's sports is that it's not only for women, it's for men. And I think the fact that you're seeing the growth in women's sports, it's grown triple digits just in the last 12 months. And the reason for that is that audiences are coming, not only women. And that's because it's incredibly competitive, incredibly compelling, and I think there's more parity. And so that makes it really interesting as well.
On the parity front, Ilona, the last Olympics was the first time we had just as many female athletes as we did male athletes. I think the next Olympics, we're expecting for the first time there to be more female athletes than male athletes. Do you think the culture, though, around supporting women at the Olympics has caught up to the numbers? This is something that Allyson Felix talks a lot about, how she has had to bring a nursery to the Olympics, how they're trying to get more attention in the media for women's sports. Or do you still think we have more room to grow there?
There's always room to grow. I will say it has been amazing. Like at the last Olympics, we had the men's tournament before ours, and they had like 60,000 fans there for all the days. And I was like, that's, amazing. And then we had it the same as well. So it's possible. I think that what's so cool is like these athletes like Allyson Felix, like Simone Biles, who are like, speaking out so that even though they might not go to the next Olympics, it'll be better for those. So I think that's where we can use the power that we have as athletes. Like we've experienced it. How can we make it better for the next generation? Like she said, women athletes will support each other, even if we're competitors. And I think we're always going to strive to make it a more comfortable, profitable place for us.
Love that. Comfortable and profitable. That's how I want to live my life. When we think about rugby in particular, you've got the World Cup coming up. that is a very competitive environment. You know, you're competing to be the best in the world. How do you think that is going to boost the sport of rugby in the U.S. and then, of course, around the world since we're here in France?
I hope that it's kind of like the women's soccer team. I don't want to get it wrong. I think it was 98. Does anyone? Yeah, 98 France that really kind of skyrocketed women's soccer. You know, Mia Hamm and what they did there. So I hope that it does the same for us in that way. Again, we have a lot of work to do. It's in England, which is a rugby country. They love rugby. I hope we can fill those stadiums and get people to come out and watch. And like you're saying, it's just as exciting as the men's game. Maybe a little different in some ways, but it doesn't make it bad. I think this is the jumping off point. But as rugby, we're a very sometimes older-minded sport run by sometimes men who only see how the men's game has risen. So I think we need to think more modern in terms and how can the women's game evolve, because we're not the same as the men's and we have to use different tactics to, you know, make our place.
Rita, when I think about women's sports that are not necessarily mainstream, softball, volleyball, rugby, even women's golf, like ratings are getting higher. There is more of a fandom that's coming in, but there's still a huge delta between basketball and those sports. How is Disney addressing that and trying to bridge that gap?
Well, you know, we did that deal with the NCAA to have all 8 of the various sports, plus all the way through the championship. So we're making sure that those championships are getting the right windows and the right audiences and the right promotion. And by the way, have the right brands investing in them, because brands have been showing up the last 5 years in ways that we have not seen before. And I would say the last 18 months, you are seeing mainstream big marketers spending big money behind it, not because it's the right thing to do, but because it's good for their business. And they're seeing it pay off in their earnings and their results, and they're speaking a lot about that. The other piece that I think is really interesting is you're seeing more girls actively engaged in sports, and you want them to be engaged in sports, number one, because it's a big driver for, you know, development, it's a big driver for mental wellness, and the more girls play sports, the more women's sports become filled with talent and future opportunity. And so that's a really important piece too that we're spending a lot of time now as a company, making sure that kids are getting into sports, because it's a great place for them to build self-confidence, build mental health, wellness, all of the things that make them better people.
I think about some of those simulcasts of like the Super Bowl, for example. I know Paramount does something with Nickelodeon. You guys do a bunch of simulcasts. Like, how are you thinking about reaching that very, very young demographic with women's sports?
Well, we have been doing that for some of the major events. I mean, the leagues all love that. It's actually something that we're talking about more in terms of what's that strategy, what's the right sports talent to help us tell those stories. Because we have to do it in partnership with athletes as well, right? People follow the athletes as much about who they are as an athlete, but who they are as a person, right? Like, we have a youth initiative where Steph Curry is part of the program. And the reason he matters is because he's a father first. He has an incredible relationship with his kids, and it tells a story that fans want to watch and learn and be invested in. And so that's important too, right? And the way we tell that story with brands is really important as well. And so you have brands who have been in it for a long time, as you know, like Andrea Brimmer from Ally Bank, who basically said, I'm taking half of my budget and I'm putting it in women's sports and I'm just doing it. And their business has transformed. I mean, she is an incredible case study. But we also, I remember doing a deal many, many years ago with Google for the WNBA. And she said, I will double the spend, but it needs primetime windows on ABC. She wouldn't do it unless we did that as a company. That takes, right, initiative. It takes commitment. And it takes, like, someone leaning in like Lorraine did at that time to put it forward. And now you're trying to see all these brands trying to keep up. And what do you have available in women's sports? And, you know, 70% of live female sports games are on the ESPN platform. Not only ESPN, ABC, Disney+, Hulu. We are being intentional about how we distribute those games, how we're investing in talent in front of the camera to tell those stories, and making sure that anybody who wants to see it, not only the sports fans, but the casual fan who's going to come to those platforms has a chance to watch.
That is wild when you just mentioned about Lorraine, like the fact that you have to, someone has to step up and be a leader. Ilona, think about what you're doing, a documentary with Hello Sunshine. You're a busy person, like you're a full-time athlete, and yet you need to be building a media platform. so that you can tell the story to inspire young girls. It's a great opportunity. One could argue it is a little bit of a burden, though, that you have to be the one passing that torch. Why do you choose to do that? And what's the value that it brings?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it, but I think in many ways it's not enough, especially for female athletes, what we do on the field, right? I mean, you could be the best rugby player in the world. I bet a lot of you can't name her. It's not me. But it does it. You can work so hard on the field as a female athlete, and you won't actually see, any monetary increase in that. I mean, so for me, it was like, okay, well, I love this sport, but also it's not kind of paying me, what maybe I deserve or what is able to live a comfortable life. So that's why I kind of turned to media, and I saw the value in it, because we talk about sponsorships as female athletes, but there was never really a clear path to get there, because it was like, okay, well, I'll just keep playing and I'll keep getting better. Well, brands weren't seeing that. So we needed to make ourselves kind of something that was attractive to them, that, we had value and that we were going to put out a story for them. So I do it because I want to keep playing rugby, but I also want to live a good life. And I think what it's also done is it's helped get my sport out there. By getting me out there, it's gotten my sport out there and my teammates out there. But it is hard at times that I have to do that. I can't just be like some of the men's rugby players in international rugby who make, millions of pounds. I won't ever do that making my sport. I have to go to a 12-hour shoot and then go to practice, and then I have to travel to Cannes and do all this stuff. It's kind of the plight of a female athlete.
That's interesting, though. I mean, I think part of the reason we're having this conversation is because, hopefully in our lifetime, we'll get to a place where there isn't that burden, where you have to be doing all of this. But I think one of the accidental positive things about it is that it's forced a lot of women to tell their stories, when I think women tend to be, especially female athletes, more humble and more behind the scenes about it. Rita, when you talk to some of your women sportscasters, I think about Elle, of course, and the fabulous trio that she's part of. What do they have to say about being the people on the front powering women's sports?
I mean, there is no one, I would say, no one more passionate about wanting to be that voice and constantly being that voice than Elle Duncan. She is extraordinary in how she tells a story, how she leads by example, how she always lifts up women. And I think for her, she understands the burden, but she actually doesn't see it as a burden. She sees it as a tremendous privilege to be able to speak in many rooms. And I'm talking, there is not a room, like she will come and host something for us that has nothing to do with anything around female sports, and she will deliver that message. Because it's her fabric, it's who she is. She believes in it so passionately. She talks about it all the time. And I think it's really empowering to hear someone so authentically believe so valuably in what they believe and what they're working on and what they're doing. And it's really changed the game. I mean, I think it is, well, you see it in our company that, when you look around Jimmy's table, the leadership of ESPN, more than 50% of the executives running that company are women, right? And they're senior people. But, it comes from our chairman, right? Like he invested in a women's soccer team, Angels FC, right? He and his wife, and they believe in female sports. It comes from the top. There is a momentum inside the company around how are we going to win at this? How are we going to help these incredible athletes show up and win every single time? Because it is such an opportunity, not only for them, but for us as a culture.
Yes. We just have a few seconds left here. Ilona, I want to finish with you. A lot of people, especially in the U.S., might not have ever played rugby. In gym class growing up, everyone's done volleyball, and we've done track and field, and we've done softball. Like, most people haven't gotten to experience the thrill. What is so thrilling about rugby that we are missing out on? What's the most incredible aspect of it?
Oh, getting tackled. That is just fun. You guys got to try that. No, what I love about rugby is it's one of those, I think, few sports where you're never told to tone it down. Like, I remember playing field hockey, and my coach would always say I'd go through somebody to get to the ball, or basketball, you'd get fouled in the paint. Rugby was one of those where it was like, we want you to stiff arm her face. And we want you to go run right through her. And I feel like I could really express myself. And this body that was, sorry, a lot of anger. This body that was so big and so powerful, muscular, like never found my place. Then to be on a field where they were like, oh, you're a big girl, we need you out there. And for a big girl to not be a bad term, just to be like, there's a place for you here, and we want you to be as big, as powerful as possible. But it's great for anger management if anyone is also thinking about getting out there.
But there's also opportunities for little people in rugby too.
1,000%.
Like
yeah.
it's like a lot of
They
people.
don't stiff arm. They're fine. The kids are fine. No, there are a lot of opportunities everywhere. Anyone in this room.
Anyone in this room. A really huge thanks to Rita, who, again, Rita does this conversation with us every year. She's super committed to women's sports, as does the whole ESPN Disney family. So thank you for being here. And Ilona, thank you for being here. Like, just to even, I'm now excited. I'm like, I have had a tough interview this morning. Maybe I can go play some rugby and get some of that stress out.
Let's all head out.
All right, thank you, everyone. And stay put, because we got programming all day here in the Axios Live House. Thank you.